This is NFL Daily. Cam Rogers alongside Mitchell Renz. We're talking about the Colts right now, and of course, they need a new head coach. So we have the top 10 options out there for the Indianapolis Colts to look at for the head coaching position. Let's take a look at number 10 here, Mr. Bruce Arians, and he's a bit of a long shot here, Mitchell. Let's face it, he retired. He said he is not going to return to coaching, but everybody has a price, and minds can change.
Yeah, minds can change, but this would surprise me. I am a huge Bruce Arians fan, and going back to Indy would be pretty interesting, but this guy just retired. He might have been the oldest coach in the NFL this past year, so it doesn't totally surprise me, but this would be one of those, like, pinch me, am I dreaming? Is he really going back to the Colts? I don't think so.
So Bruce Arians is there at number 10. Let's get to number 9 here. David Shaw, head coach of the Stanford Cardinal. There you see his record, 73-21 in 7 years at Stanford. And oh, by the way, that Andrew Luck connection.
Oh, I love the little Andrew Luck connection. I mean, you have to throw it in here. But this is also a guy who has NFL experience. Raiders, Eagles, Ravens, your Ravens. He also coached for the Chargers for a season. But he's an offensive-minded guy who I think would mesh pretty well with Andrew Luck in that offense. This Colts team is going to click. They need an offensive-minded guy because ultimately the team's going to run through Luck.
And as we go through these rankings here, folks, the more likely candidates are going to be in the 3 and 2 and 1 range, not necessarily here. David Shaw doing a pretty good job at Stanford in his own right. Let's get to number 8 here. This guy a long shot as well, you would presume. Jim Harbaugh, head coach of the Michigan Wolverines.
I think any candidates or any job opening or vacancy, you see Jim Harbaugh's name. And it's because this is a guy who's very well respected in the coaching realm. He's amazing with quarterbacks, but again, long shot. I think he's staying with the blue. I mean, I think that's what our insider would say. Absolutely.
James Yoder, the Michigan football insider. There's Jim Harbaugh at number 8. Let's take a look at number 7 now. Matt Rhule, head coach of Baylor, a well-respected coach, was tied to the Giants' vacancy earlier this season as well, coming off a not-so-great year with Baylor, but again, a guy that is held in high regards among coaching circles.
Yeah, don't let the 1-11 record totally fool you. I mean, this was a guy who took over the Temple Owls, a team that was abysmal. I mean, they were 2-10 in his first year, and then 2 years later, he went on to win the conference for the Temple Owls 2 straight years, 2015 and 2016, and then he got his opportunity with Baylor. I think Matt Rhule's a good coach. I think there's a reason why he is well respected.
So Matt Rhule checks in at number 7 in our Indianapolis Colts head coaching hot board. Let's take a look at some of the more likely candidates as we creep into some of the Eagles assistants. Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator for Philadelphia, did a great job a year ago, obviously captured a Super Bowl victory over the New England Patriots. Schwartz, by the way, has interviewed during the head coaching search earlier this year in the NFL too.
Yeah, I mean, again, we saw him. He was a head coach for the Lions, and I think he kind of gets a raw deal with the Lions. You see that record, 29-52, but he took over the Lions team that went that was 0-16 in 2008, and then he turned them to be at least a decent team. But again, guys, when we sit here and talk about Schwartz, for me, Schwartz is a guy who should be a coordinator, not so much of a head coach.
All right, so there is Jim Schwartz there at number 6. Let's take a look at number 5 now. Leslie Frazier, defensive coordinator for the Bills, has been coaching in the NFL since 1999, served as a Colts assistant in 2005 and 2006 before moving to Minnesota and becoming the DC there, eventually becoming the head coach. What do we make of Leslie Frazier here? We haven't heard this name in a while, it seems.
I'm kind of glad we haven't heard it. I'm not the biggest Leslie Frazier fan. So I'm a believer when you have really good players, the coach looks really, he plays much better. I mean, I always say that Phil Jackson is a guy who, if you give me Michael Jordan in his prime, I'm going to win some rings. You give me Kobe in his prime, I'm going to get some rings. Frazier's only winning season is when Adrian Peterson decided to run for 2,000 yards. You give me Adrian Peterson in a season where he's just mowing down people, you're going to win some games.
All right, so there is Leslie Frazier checking in at number 5 in our Colts coaching hot board. Let's take a look at number 4 now. Dan Campbell, tight end coach for the New Orleans Saints, joined the Saints staff before the 2017 season. This name may sound familiar for many people out there because, yes, he filled in for the fired Joe Philbin back in 2015 as the interim head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So there's Dan Campbell there, Mitchell.
I like this move, but here's another guy who I think is more of a coordinator, and this would be a pretty hot, this one would surprise me. I hope Campbell doesn't hear this, though, because I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. This guy's ripped. Like, he's jacked. So, Campbell, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, man, but I think you're more of a coordinator.
So Dan Campbell is our number 4 option for the Colts. Let's get into the top 3 here. John DeFilippo, quarterbacks coach for the Eagles, did a great job in the development of Carson Wentz in 2017, and then picked up right where he left off with Nick Foles, and did a great job with Nick Foles, as you saw him play well in Super Bowl 52. John DeFilippo, a big-time name. I thought he would have been a great fit for the Arizona Cardinals as a head coach. He deserves a head coaching position at some point. Maybe he gets it here.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be sought after now when we saw a guy like Carson Wentz just come onto the scene, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions before the ACL injury. But good coaches build their offense around their best players, and we saw DeFilippo, and maybe a guy who might be on our list again is going to be coming up, but they build their offense around their best players. Carson Wentz was amazing, and then they integrate the new offense around Nick Foles, and when you know it, they won a Super Bowl.
Small connection to the Colts, by the way, was a summer coaching intern in 1998. So just saying, folks. There's John DeFilippo at number 3. Let's take a look at number 2. We'll stay with the Philadelphia Eagles. Frank Reich, offensive coordinator there. He will interview with the Colts on Friday, according to Adam Schefter there, Mitchell. So things are already in place here for Frank.
Yeah, and I mean, despite losing Jason Peters this past year, they still had an amazing offense and an unbelievably efficient offense, and Reich deserves a lot of credit for that. We said with Carson Wentz coming in and out of this second year, did not have a sophomore slump whatsoever, and Reich is a big reason for that. An offense that did not have a lot of weapons, and then you see players just ultimately, like Alshon Jeffrey, coming in right away, bang, amazing. Zach Ertz finally took that next step, and then Nelson Aguilar came out of nowhere. Reich deserves a lot of credit for that.
So Frank Reich is our number 2 candidate to become the next head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. How about number 1? Dave Toub, special teams coach for the Chiefs. A name mentioned early in the head coaching search as well has connections to GM Chris Ballard dating back to their time with the Chicago Bears. Mitchell, what do we make of Dave Toub here?
Well, he's respected as being one of the best special teams minds in the game. We saw him take a guy like who was not really well known, Tyreek Hill, and turn him into, you could argue, the best special teams player or the most feared special teams player since a guy maybe by the name of Devin Hester. And then when you just see him totally flip a team, special teams like the Chiefs, that's why he's on here, and he's very well respected.
Let's summarize our top 10 candidates to become the next head coach of the Colts. 10 through 6 here, folks. Bruce Arians, David Shaw, Jim Harbaugh, Matt Rhule, and Jim Schwartz all seem fairly unlikely. Maybe Schwartz as a possibility here. 5 through 1, the more likely candidates: Leslie Frazier, Dan Campbell, John DeFilippo, Frank Reich, and Dave Toub, the special teams coach for the Kansas City Chiefs.